The very famous narration of Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who embraced Islam relatively late. I mean, this was a man that oppressed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam quite a bit. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated him with so much love that he thought maybe he's the most beloved person to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just because of how the treatment of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam was towards him as soon as he embraced Islam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used him as a commander in the battle of Dhat al-Salasil. So Amr ibn al-As wants to prove a point. He asks the Prophet ﷺ in front of everybody, Ya Rasulullah, ayyun nasi ahabbu ilayk. O Messenger of Allah, who is the most beloved person in the world to you? Thinking, there is no way he's not going to say my name. And the Prophet ﷺ says, without hesitation, Aisha. And that's something that they did not understand at the time. How are you going to say Aisha, right? He said, no, I'm not talking about your wife. I'm talking about the men. Ya Rasulullah, ar-rijal, not the women. And the Prophet ﷺ said, well, Abuha, her father, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said Abuha rather than Abu Bakr, her father, means he's still connecting his love to Abu Bakr to the love that he has for Aisha. So I love Aisha, and then I love her father. Then he said, okay, then who? Fine, Abu Bakr has been your best friend forever, we understand that. He said, then Umar. He said, then who? He said, then Uthman. He said, then who? He said, then Ali. He said, then I stopped asking the Prophet ﷺ because I thought he'd never say my name. So it shows you two things. Number one, that Rasulullah ﷺ had the capacity to treat people with so much goodness that they would have thought, even after short interactions, despite a history of oppressing him, that they might be the most beloved person in the world to him. And that the Prophet ﷺ had no shame in saying that the most beloved person in the world to him was Aisha, radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa an abiha. And subhanallah, Imam al-Zuhri, rahimahullah, he says, as he narrates much of the story of Aisha, he says, أول حب كان في الإسلام حب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عائشة رضي الله عنها. The first love story we have in Islam is the love of the Prophet ﷺ to Aisha. Now obviously, Khadija radiallahu anha predates Aisha radiallahu anha, but we don't have that seerah so much because it's Meccan seerah. We have the seerah of Aisha radiallahu anha and the Prophet ﷺ in explicit detail, and it was witnessed by an entire community of Muslims over a span of time. And so it's this detailed love story, and what Az-Zuhri is saying, as if to say that if you know this love story, you don't need to know any other love story. That this gives you the true dynamics of what a love story should look like in the capacity of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course in the case of Aisha radiallahu anha, loving the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he then goes on to mention some lines from Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu. قال حباها بصفو الود منها فأصبحت تبوء به في جنة الخلد منزلا حليلة خير الخلق وابنة حبه وصاحبه في الغار إذ كان موئلا. He says radiallahu ta'ala anhu that this was the person that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was made to love due to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored her with a particular type of wood. Meaning, she had the keys, as we said, to the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She knew how to show love to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a certain way as well. And so she deserved it forever, for all time, in Jannatul Firdaus. Because remember, Jibreel alayhi salam said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this is your wife in this life and in the next. She is your wife in Jannah as well. And then mentioned that she is the wife of the best human being and the daughter of his best friend, his companion in the cave when no one else was with him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Prophet ﷺ loved her and she loved him in a way that was unrivaled. And here's the beauty of that, is that everybody in the community knew it, except that that also posed certain problems for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So you might remember when we talked about the Ansar used to pay close attention to everything the Prophet ﷺ liked, everything that made him happy, and they wanted to make him happy sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they noticed the love the Prophet ﷺ had for Aisha radiallahu anha. So what did they do? They would save all of their gifts for the night that the Prophet ﷺ was with Aisha. So when they wanted to send the Prophet ﷺ food, they waited for the night that he was with Aisha radiallahu anha. When they wanted to send any gifts, they waited for the night that he was with Aisha radiallahu anha. And they did that out of their love for the Prophet ﷺ, except that made the other wives of the Messenger ﷺ pretty unhappy. So we'll start from this place, inshaAllah ta'ala.